As we watch people down through the years, it is astonishing how much energy the average person wastes in defending his own negative attitudes. We are so willing and ready to protect our right to be wrong, and at the same time so slow to advance the cause of our right to be right. Nearly always life begins and unfolds through a series of negative reactions to circumstances. There's an old saying that we all know is true, that bad news travels more rapidly than good news. We are more responsive to our instinct to criticize than to commend. We are quicker to condemn than we are to praise, and we are more likely to observe the faults in others than to seek out their good points. All these tendencies seem to rise in deep sources within our own natures. We are not even aware of our own critical tendencies in many instances. And when we are reminded of them, we take it for granted that we have a right to them, that we must have the privilege of objection, that we must claim our birthright of individual thinking because of a tendency to analysis, which means simply to take things apart. And by the time we get through taking our friends, neighbors, relatives, and world apart, the collective results in this kind of a disjointed situation in which we now find ourselves. So many people have taken the world apart, and so few have attempted to put it together, that we cannot be surprised if it is not the kind of a world we wish it was. If then this tendency to negative attitude lies at the root of our trouble, is there no way in which we can remedy it? One of the things that perhaps points this up more than anything else is our personal reaction to situations beyond our personal control. There's hardly anyone who does not become indignant, dismayed, astonished, offended when he picks up his daily newspaper. Yet it would be difficult to prove that any of these emotions contribute to the solution of the problems which the paper unfolds. There is no actual indication that indignation is solutional. Now, some can say that it can be solutional to this degree, that it can cause persons to unite, to rise above personal opinions and attitudes, and can create a kind of aggressive action in some direction or other, that it forms a valuable criticism by which things can be changed. For most leadership is sensitive to the indignation of its following. Actually, however, it is not the indignation that causes this reaction which we hope to achieve, because the problem finally settles down to a simple issue: what is right and what is wrong. And the individual attempting to solve this, coming to valid conclusions and clinging to that which is right, develops a strong, natural, defensive and offensive organism. He will support the things he believes. He will attempt to correct the faults that are around him. He will unite his resources with groups or movements which are accomplishing ends which he regards as right. But none of these things are accomplished actually by fretting, by fussing, by becoming angry or disturbed. The disturbance is merely a loss of energy. The solution is achieved by the individual's clearly defining what is necessary and doing it. Now, one of the reasons, I think, why we have a tendency to dissolve in conflicts within ourselves and with others is because conflict is our only outlet. We do not have any clear concept of solution. The individual confronted with a problem does not see how he can solve it. He does not see any pattern through the application of which the problem can be corrected. Therefore, he can only stew. He can fuss. He can fume. He can become disturbed. In this way, letting off steam. But this is only a manifestation of frustration. It does not lead to the answer. The reason why we do not have more answers is because we do let off too much steam without purposeful meaning or viewpoint. And also because in most instances we are untrained to find the answer. There is an answer to every problem. This answer does not lie in excitement. It does not rest in righteous or unrighteous indignation. It lies in skill. It lies in a disciplined method by which certain ills can be corrected. The application of the proper methodology to a problem must ultimately be solutional. When we look around us, we see the problem, and we recognize that we are unfitted to cope with it. Why are we unfitted? Because the sources of our instruction have generally ignored the need for the correction of existing problems. This does not mean that these sources are entirely sterile of constructive ideality. They are not. But like most of our thinking, our educational and cultural perspective jumps over the immediate, passes or bypasses the simple thing that is needed now, and escapes into generalities, dealing with large issues, but failing to meet the challenge of an immediate problem. Thus, we may have a strong training on what would be the theoretical course of our political, cultural, or economic life, but we are not trained to meet the daily emergencies of our own existence. We are not equipped to do so. We are not given the resources necessary to solve our problem. Nearly everyone who is out trying to solve other people's problems has problems of his own, which require immediate attention, but he is not able to cope with them. He is not able to meet them with necessary resource ability. If then, being frustrated, he sees no other clear course of procedure, we find him settle down into the cultivation of negative, fatalistic, and essentially detrimental personal attitudes. He becomes a fusser. He becomes a conscientious objector to everything. He becomes disillusioned, cynical, skeptical, and particularly among the intellectual group, he loses faith in the possibility of solution. We see this around us every day, where the individual is no longer attempting to plan in terms of solution, but is simply allowing himself to live from day to day in a world that is entirely unsatisfactory to him. This also, of course, brings us to one of the most important considerations that we have, namely the relative inability of any individual to change the collective pattern of society around him. A few powerful individuals may have considerable spheres of social influence, but even these spheres are strangely circumscribed. The moment an individual in high position attempts an action contrary to the general opinion of his time, he finds himself